what are these specific forms of light consciousness and how are they operative within you, right? So what is the subconscious that connects to the moon? What is the super consciousness that connects to the sun? And how can an average person understand that they're made up of these layers and that they can work with them to create an experience of life that feels more aligned?
Welcome back to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. I'm your host, Teresa. So I am so excited about my guest this week because we are going to, or she's going to share with us about melting together mind, body, and spirit into what she does in the world. So this is going to be such an exciting show. So I want to welcome my guest, Emily Ridout. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So without me sharing too much about what you do, because this is really exciting because I love both of what you do and the combination you have together, I would like you to share with the listeners, what do you do and who do you serve with your work?
I'd love to. So I'm an Astro Yoga specialist, and what that is the combination of yoga and astrology. They've been linked for thousands of years, and you can use these two modalities together to really revolutionize your life. So to make yoga practices that are applicable to your personal astrology and to really understand the energetic makeup of who you are and what you can do to align with your most authentic and highly expressed self. So I work primarily with two forms of clients. One is yoga teachers who are looking to learn this modality so that they can incorporate it into their classes or even become professional astrologers themselves. A subcategory of that is I work with professional astrologers learning the yoga aspect. But then I also work with everyday people. So individuals who hear this topic and something in them clicks and they say yes, right? And then I work with them to look at their own astrology chart to really understand at an energetic level what it means. So not just the run of the mill, like you're an Aries and that means this, but really what it means physically in their body, energetically in their self-expression, right? And then I help them form practices, or even some people aren't yoga people, so I do activities for them to really work with astrology in a way that helps them align, attune, and manifest what they want.
Wow. So like I said, I was excited because I've been dabbling in astrology for quite a few years, like I've evolutionary astrology and some shamanic astrology. And then, of course, yoga is amazing. So when I saw your book and what you do, I'm like, oh, yeah, you need to come on and share because this is amazing. So you said it's been around for thousands of years, but not too many people combine both of them.
Yeah, not too many people, at least in the modern context, know about their connection. And so, really, my passion is making it accessible to people. You mentioned my book. That's why I wrote that, is so anyone could pick it up and just read it, right? And start to understand and incorporate these modalities. They have been linked for thousands of years. They're actually sister sciences. There's ancient texts on them. I think the earliest text is called the Vedanga Jyotishta for people who like to Google things. But they've
That's a big
been,
word.
right? Yeah, it's Sanskrit. But they've been linked for thousands of years. And medical astrology in the Western tradition has also been a thing for a long time, which connects it to the body. And in fact, until I think it's the 1700s or maybe the 1600s, if you were going to medical school in some parts of Europe, they would make you pass an astrology exam. So that's just a fun fact.
Interesting. Didn't know that. And so, Emily, what inspired you? Because obviously you didn't come up at like 8 and go, hey, I'm going to do astrology and yoga. So what inspired you to find this modality and to, blend them beautifully together?
I would say defiance, probably. So when I was
Let's
a
be
younger,
honest here, right?
yeah, so if I'm honest, when
Mhm.
I was doing my first yoga teacher training back in 2009, my teachers who were from India, I was in India, they were talking about the astrology yoga connection at one point, and we were having to study it. And at the time, I was sort of like, that can't work. just in my brain, and like anyone who tries to disprove something, right, that has been tested for millennia, I found that I was wrong, not the thing that was ancient and well used. And so, in the process of doing a lot of charts and trying to understand how it didn't work, I wound up understanding profoundly how it did work. I wound up going back to school years later, getting a master's degree in it, and eventually forming a professional practice after doing hundreds of charts. And I've been teaching it in its context now, with the way that I work with clients for probably the past 8 or 9 years. And it's been just such a amazing journey to do this.
So you were in India and you said it was about 21, right? You were about 21 when you went to
I
India?
was about 21, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so what inspired you to go to India? Just do the teacher training or, I mean, because that's not like, I'm going to go to India at 21.
Well, I went to study abroad because I used to make music. And actually, my first job out of college was teaching music at a music conservatory in India. The movie Slumdog Millionaire had just come out. My boss was the man who wrote all the music for that. He
Wow.
formed a classic Indian music, classic Western music fusion conservatory, and I'm a classically trained vocalist. So I went and taught basically Western vocal performance in the style of classically trained stuff. And so I was there doing that too.
So you were like kind of doing a couple things and then you found, I mean, obviously went for yoga training then.
Right. So I did the yoga training prior to teaching at the conservatory, and I was just practicing yoga while I was there. There's excellent yoga, as it's from India. It's a
Yeah.
great place to study it. And I've done teacher trainings in the United States as well, continuing on the journey. But it was definitely my first deep dive into Astro Yoga, and something that inside of me, I just was like, okay, yes, this works so well. Because when I was trying to disprove it, I drew up several people's charts and I was shocked at what I found. And they were sort of surprised too. We were all in shock at that point. And then from there, I still witness things that sometimes surprise me because of how accurate they are. When you're like, oh, it works, but I didn't expect it to work that well. Um,
Right.
it, it really is an amazing modality, and I found it to be incredibly, incredibly accurate in what it does for people when I've worked with medical astrology clients or just regular people looking at what's up.
Yeah, super cool. And so your book, let's talk about the book that just came out, Astro Yoga for an Aquarian Age. And in the book, you broke it down really to the first part is the astrology, and then the latter part is the yoga. So share a little bit about the astrology aspect of what's in the book.
Right. So I go into the understanding of the zodiac and the planets as energetic expressions of life. So a lot of the time, we think about the zodiac or astrology as being separate from life, I think culturally, or something happening out there, versus when you really understand astrology at a deep level, you see it playing out around you. So you'll see things that remind you of Mercury or Jupiter, right? You'll see things that give you a certain sense about them. And so I really wanted people to understand that and understand how to apply it to yoga. And I also wanted people to understand exactly what is light consciousness, right? When we're working with astrology, we think about light consciousness or vibratory consciousness or fractal layers. You could frame it in any kind of way, but we're talking about what are these specific forms of light consciousness and how are they operative within you, right? So, what is the subconscious that connects to the moon? What is the super consciousness that connects to the sun? And how can an average person understand that they're made up of these layers and that they can work with them to create an experience of life that feels more aligned, an experience that feels more loving, compassionate, peaceful, maybe even exciting, right? these sorts of things.
Oh God, we don't want exciting. We want enthusiastic, Emily.
Enthusiastic, there's a good word too.
So there's all kinds of different variations of astrology. Like I mentioned, I just dabbled a bit in evolutionary and shamanic. There's Vedic. There's all kinds. So what type would you consider or would you call what's in your book?
So I approached this book with the thought that most people would be reading it from a Western context. So I have favored teaching and sharing about tropical Western astrology, which would be a form of astrology more familiar to most people in the West.
Yeah.
When I do my own work for people, I actually read with an understanding of both. And that's sprinkled into this book as well, is the understanding of both tropical astrology and also sidereal astrology, which is what like Vedic forms of astrology are usually based in, that form of the zodiac. And so I do read both. I'll read both. Like when people book me, sometimes they'll request to do the sidereal form instead of the tropical form. It's all well and good, but when I do readings at all, I'm always aware of the placements in all of the different contexts. I love evolutionary astrology. I love Hellenistic astrology, all the different forms. I think it's really good to learn to read any particular form. And then from there to really understand why that form has articulated itself separately from the other forms and why, right? And then you'll sort of see how each system is cohesive and also how they interrelate.
Interesting, because for myself, and I just recently had one, I guess it was maybe a year and a half ago, a Vedic one. I've never had one before. And it was so different. Like my ascendant's different. And I was like, wow, but it did make sense to me. So it's interesting how different variations of astrology can make sense in who we are made up of. I love the way you talked about the layers, because it really is like a layer of who we are with the different planets and energies. But I found it very fascinating that such a different variation, the Vedic versus what we do use the tropical here in this, the Western. But yet it made sense to me. I resonated with, being a Cancer ascendant and then being a Gemini ascendant. So it was like so crazy amazing.
Hey, I'm a Cancer ascendant and a Gemini ascendant in those two systems.
Oh, interesting.
So respect. Yeah,
We should compare our charts now.
right. We can see how they're aligned.
Exactly.
Those two systems, if you think about it, the planets were in a particular location, and so that energetic structure is one thing, and then the backdrop of whether you're working with tropical or sidereal, you're right, it's like two separate layers, and so you're looking at an energetic continuum in a particular way. And for some people, it'll sort of melt the brain if they've yet to study astrology, so that the average person doesn't need to worry about that. But the student of astrology would, I think, be well served to consider the juxtaposition and intersectionality of these different systems.
And what I love about your book is that it's very simple. I mean, it's in layman's terms. It's not too complex, because astrology can be complex.
Mhm.
And
I had
each one, you what?
I had people read it to test against for that. So I'm glad that you feel that way, because I had people read
Seriously.
to who didn't know astrology, who didn't know yoga, to be like, we don't understand what this word means or this thing. So I went back and sort of tried to doctor it up for everybody.
It's brilliant, Emily. Really, it is, because I've read stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, even knowing what I might know about a certain astrology, especially evolution or something, like, wow, that's a complex, aspect. So kudos to how you wrote the book. So it's very readable to, the person that's aware of astrology and then the person that isn't. So now let's dive into a little bit about the yoga part, because I felt this very fascinating. So I'm a Leo sun. And so I was very fascinated with the different positions for a Leo to really access that energy.
Yeah, Leo rules the spine and the heart. It's such a beautiful sign, such a beautiful energy. Of course, we all have a spine and heart, right? So we all have Leo energy inside of us. But to really access Leo energy, we see that an opening of the heart space is really necessary, and a connection there, as well as the movement of healthy action in the spine. So I always wind up doing a lot of big heart opening back bends during Leo season, which of course, depending on your physical body, right, might be different for different people. Some folks will do a bigger, like full wheel. Some people will just simply lean back and open the heart. Um, there's a there's a lot that can be done without reading astrology and just knowing a couple of your signs.
Yeah, that thing that's the exciting part, because anyone can even access this book and just go, okay, well, I've got a Virgo moon, so let me go to the Virgo part, or my sun is in, Taurus, let me check out that. And that accessibility too, with just, maybe not necessarily understanding so much about the astrology, but going to the yoga part. So it's, again, Emily, I'll say it again, it's a beautiful blend of both, but I love the way you definitely did separate the two.
Well, thank you so much. That is so wonderful and flattering to hear. I'm very grateful. I tried to put it so it was simple so you could just look at your sign. And then I put in an example or two of, like, if you were going to flow for an entire chart or for a personal problem that someone came up to you about, how to flow for a complex energetic structure versus how to flow for a single sign or time period. But my goal was that any person who does any amount of yoga, or if they teach yoga, could just pick up the book and say, okay, I have some ideas about the sort of thing that would be useful. We're going to be releasing this, I think, in Scorpio season, right? For Scorpio energy, for Scorpio season, or for my sun sign or my friend's ascendant, right?
Right. And so, in creating this book, did you like check out if anyone else had done anything like Astro Yoga, or any other components that you go, okay, well, I'm going to add that to my book?
I've definitely looked for every book on Astro Yoga that I could ever find. Um, I found there are a couple very good books out based in the Vedic system of astrology based yoga. There are very few books out on Astro Yoga from sort of a more Western perspective. And so I wrote this book really out of necessity, because I teach an Astro Yoga teacher training course, and the students would often ask for book recommendations, and I would come out with a stack of 50, and then we started like translating it into Japanese, and then the books aren't translatable into Japanese, and it was just too much of a mess to, I mean, anyone who wants to read those 50 books, they should. But, but I was like, maybe I'll just write a book that sort of cohesively brings this together. Um, a good thing for someone who's teaching it, a good thing for someone who's just curious. That was my goal, is to give robust, high quality information in a clear, easy to digest way.
Beautiful. Well, again, kudos. You did a great job. And so, beyond the book, which everyone can obviously get on Amazon.com, I'm certain. I mean, I'll have all the links in the show notes, but there's a lot of ways to get the book. But what else? So you have a teacher training, and what other offerings do you have for clients that might want to come and check out what you do?
Well, something that I love that I do for people, it's so accessible, it's so affordable, is I do a membership program. The membership program is a it's a beautiful thing where we meet every couple weeks and we talk about what's going on, and I answer people's questions. Very often I can look at everyone's charts in the call and tell them about what's going on exactly for them in that time span. Not always, sometimes things get crazy, but that's something I offer. And it also gives people a ton of Astro Yoga practices that they can do at home. And so that's a membership program that I have. It's called Luminary Membership. I also have another one called Quintessence, where you get a reading a month. And then the main thing people work with me for, aside from that, are Astro Yoga sessions and also astrology readings. So I read charts. That's a really great way to go if someone just wants to deep dive into their chart. It's really amazing. And then the other things are the courses. So I have the Astro Yoga teacher training. I'll be offering advanced courses in that soon. And I also have something called Astrology Academy for people who just want to learn astrology. I do love training both beginners and advanced astrology students in figuring out what's up.
So quite a variety of amazing offerings you have there, Emily.
It's a joy to do. And if anybody wants to work with me and they're not sure, I invite them to visit my website. There's ways to contact me there, and you can always just shoot me a question via email and let me know what you need.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, like I started this conversation today was saying, I was super stoked when I saw what you do, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to come on. So thank you so much, Emily, for sharing your gift of your book and what you're doing and coming on and sharing with all my listeners around the world.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a joy to connect with you and with your listeners on this subject. I hope that anybody who's curious in Astro Yoga, give Astro Yoga a Google, check out the book. Please try this modality because it's really life-changing and such a delight and easy to incorporate at any level.
There is another wrap for another amazing episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening into another one. And a great thanks to Emily for coming on and sharing her Astro Yoga, her beautiful book, and all of her services. And like I mentioned in the episode, I was super stoked when she came on because I love astrology and I love yoga. So what a beautiful blend. And if you've not subscribed, please make sure that you do. Please like, comment, and if you know of someone that might enjoy this episode, please feel free to share. And until next week, just remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.